Good morning. My name is Reg Hunter. I'm with Fiatech. This is a discussion about productivity and advancement targets and solution enablers to achieve those targets. Deb was kind enough to join us and lead this discussion today. You've all been invited because of your interest that you've expressed in the various Fiatech activities, and because of your membership in Fiatech. And this is a discussion, so the more interactions we have with respect to what we're doing and why we're doing it and whether or not it'll be successful and how we can position ourselves to make it more successful would be great. We've earmarked this to be related to productivity advancement targets 1, 2, 3, and 7. 7 is integrated material management. Number 1 is risk change readiness, which relates to how do you go about positioning your organization to accept and adopt and embrace change for the long run. The second one is change order reduction, which is which is productivity advancement number 2. It relates to how do you reduce change orders from owners by 70%, and the last one, which is productivity advancement target number 3, and you'll see these in the slides in just a minute, which it relates to interactive project planning, which is sort of the handoff and turning on of a project. And it's kind of questionable whether or not this is in project controls or on the leadership for initiatives coming out of owners, and it's really the cusp between the two. So we're still showing it as part of the owner operator and EPC leadership initiatives. And so with that, Deb, let me just go ahead and turn it over to you, and I'll work the slides. You just tell me when you want me to change them.
Okay, thanks, Reg. As Reg says, I'd like to be a dialogue and get feedback. I think based on the conversations we've had since we first started discussing the productivity advancement targets, we know what we need. The real question that we've been discussing the last couple of months is how do we get there? So that's really what we'd like your input on. We're come up with an approach that we think will work, but in a methodology. But let's make sure we're aligned now before we start. So next slide. Hopefully you've seen that we're trying to build momentum in the industry for the conversation. There's been 2 articles, one in ENR and one in Built Worlds, and I know there's another one being worked for Upside that really says now's the time to come and engage and bring what you have to the table, figure out where it fits into the puzzle on what it takes to deliver industry-changing productivity advancement. And hopefully the momentum is building. Hopefully the fact that you showed up today says you're engaged, interested in trying to figure out, how to get more and more of your company engaged. So just a real quick look at where we've been. We started last fall with the leadership initiatives, and then really dollarized what we thought the potential was within each of those, stated those as 12 performance advancement targets, and began to work, okay, if that's the step forward we want to take, what are the success enablers that have to be in place in an organization to achieve each target? When we dollarized that, it came out to be about a 33% decrease in overall investment cost and a 10% reduction in cycle time, which is obviously a big enough carrot to go after. Hopefully that will help drive more engagement and more discussion, even if it's just discussing how real are the targets, right? I know they are very aligned with what we here at Dow have on the table, so I'm very comfortable moving forward into the next space, which is how do we get there? The feeling last fall was that in the room at the end of the conference was that we have probably 60 to 80% of what we need to achieve this dramatic step change. We just don't have it organized or presented in such a way that a company can grab a hold of it and begin to use it. So that's really what we're hoping the PATS will do, is to provide a framework for an organization to self-assess and see what they're missing, and then already know who out there has a solution that we can then begin discussions with. So definitely need everybody to come to the table. owner-operators, EPCs, solution providers, academics, service providers. It's a very complex puzzle to put together, and everyone's got a piece. So, as Reg says, the 12 advanced productivity advancement targets are out there. We are kicking off 12 teams. I think one of the challenges, I know here at Dow, we've sat down and said, okay, which piece of Dow is best able to engage in that conversation, or most needs to know what the industry best practice is, and we've outlined who's going to be a member of each team, and where we think we have enough of a value case to perhaps even step up and be the owner-operator leader. So, Reg mentioned the first three are sort of being driven by the owner-operator group here, but obviously the solutions are in the EPC solution provider space. So change readiness is a big thing. As the data showed last fall, we have to improve our ability to sustain adoption of this kind of change through our project environment. Reduction in owner-initiated change and interactive project planning are key elements to stop the bleeding, the cost bleeding, if you will, as we make changes after authorization. And then PETs 4 and 5 are around project management, integrated project planning, and regulatory streamlining, and they're really focused on predictability and cycle time reduction. And then design, to me the big thing for PAT 6 is changing the focus of design and say, what can design do to boost construction productivity, and the handoff to operations and maintenance, because that's where the big money in the work process is. So, next slide. Hopefully some of you on the phone are here because of PAT 7, which I think is a very exciting opportunity area. How do we get materials to the field on time and make sure construction can see what they have and what they don't have yet? And then PAT 8 and 9 will be where we really focus on the actual, how does construction use the tool sets and the work processes that have been defined, and how do we get the data flowing from the field into those tools so that true construction planning, advanced work packaging can be successful. And then life cycle information management is really saying it's needed in all these PATs. So we do need a core group to stay focused on how do we get the data to flow, and that's PAT 10. PAT 11 is a new area that we're trying to get maintenance and operations engagement from the owners involved in, and that's really understanding what they need so that we can reduce the transition cost and schedule of that handover by 50%. And then PAT 12, very successfully based on the Horizon 360 team, and still be our core group to continue to identify what's happening out there in the rest of the world and where is it as far as bringing it into the construction industry. So hopefully we've got the improvement space covered. If anybody thinks we missed something, let us know. But I think we've got the big buckets of opportunity covered. So what are the success enablers? They really represent our understanding of what it takes to achieve the PAT. So it's really the fingerprint, and as you can see, a fingerprint's pretty complicated, but it's all the pieces it takes for an organization to successfully achieve that PAT result. Next slide. We really want to use the success enablers as the foundation and focus for lining up the solutions and cultivating the discussion of what we know and what we don't know about how to achieve something. So the real first step is to get your expertise and take a look at those success enablers and make sure we've got the right things on the table. And then organizations can begin to self-assess against those and say, do I have that? If not, how do I go ahead and achieve it? So we'll talk today about how we're going to place the current success enablers into an environment, a collaborative environment, so that you guys can all contribute. And we just need to build on what we have. Some PATs are farther ahead in that area than others. I don't know, Reg, if you have anything you want to add about that, or?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. It's a little bit of a comfort zone thing. I'm not very good at social media. I've never tweeted in my life, and I'm starting to be aging my marking my age with that statement. But you're going to see in the upcoming slides a description of a totally new way of interfacing. And what we really are doing is challenging the notion about, oh, let's have a meeting or let's have a conference call and stuff where you only have some small segment of the overall thing. And given the complexity of trying to achieve these overarching productivity advancements across a broad group of stakeholders, it's just not it's not useful because you hone in on one thing, but you really don't consider pushing the frontiers across multiple places. And so what you'll see in this PAT work area slides is how do you go about pursuing the solution suite that you need in order to achieve the productivity advancement target on multiple fronts simultaneously, where you allow subject matter experts themselves to hone in on certain success enablers that are of interest to them and or their company.
Yeah, so rather than trying to replace it, put it in a big document or get a perfect document, I think we're really saying let's begin the dialogue, but have it set up in such a way that you can go in and see what the piece you want, but also begin to back up and see the bigger whole. So we're really asking for solutions to be linked up to the success enablers from anywhere. We definitely want to leverage what we've already done here in Fiatech and the knowledge of the members. But we're also going to be asking the industry organizations who have knowledge to come and place it against the success enablers, so that again we can say, oh, okay, if I'm an owner and I say no, I don't have a ripple cost model for change management. Who does? What do we already know about that? Who has knowledge about it? What case studies have already been shared? That can be hooked off that one place so that I can go really investigate in one area what it takes to do that piece. So we are going to be asking industry organizations to participate and link up their knowledge. So.
Yeah, if you think about it, if you think about our members' meetings, and now they're called the Leadership Forum, and you think about the caliber of discussions you see in the breakout sessions and at lunches and dinners and so on, and you marvel at the severity of the problem and the degree to which people are passionate about solving it, then you really aren't sitting. You're just in isolation. You're just interacting with one group of people. But if you think about how pervasive all the diversity of the conversations and all the diversities of issues and all the experience and skills and technologies that are available, how do you go about trying to capture all of that, right? And that's a fundamentally different thing. But it's as we progress through these we'll show you about Slack in a second. As we progress through that, what you really are doing is creating a data-centric environment that allows you to cultivate those relationships and to secure those understandings and to converge on solutions, if that makes sense. Is there any questions about this slide?
I think I've heard someone express we don't want to duplicate knowledge repositories that already exist, right?
Right.
In other words, CII has a huge knowledge library. We don't want to duplicate that. We just want to build linkages so that if I'm working in a particular success enabler, I see the fact that CII has that knowledge, and hopefully it'll be easy to link to it and go look at it.
Yeah, it's really quite fascinating because we're really opportunistic, because we're saying anyone who has an answer, we're all in, okay? So if process industry practices have a practice that essentially lends itself to providing a solution to a success enabler that we identified, let's find it, let's identify it. Now, whether or not you can secure it by just paying the fee to get the practice from PIP, or how you want to do it, that's a different issue, but at least we're aware of it. And that goes through with respect to all the industry organizations for that matter.
What do you guys think? Any feedback on the concept?
It's Matt here. I think Reg nailed it there with the, it needs it needs something that can actually bring these paths together as well, and needs a vehicle that we can all be looking into each one of them at the same time as well, so that I'm sure there's going to be some cross-domain benefit from that.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating because it gives you context, right? Think of all this great innovation that's out there, but it doesn't have context. And Deb pointed out that we can save up to 30% if we do this all perfectly and all that, but we need to have all these things unified. Well, every single thing we do is important, but it lacks context. But now all of a sudden, if it has context and within our PAT, we're saying we don't really have an answer to that, we're like, well, that's not acceptable because if we don't have the answer to that, we don't have the answer to this, and we're totally screwed if we do that. So everything from anywhere has context now. So we don't have these isolated flashes of brilliance. We basically are connecting the dots finally. Sorry, I get passionate about this.
Okay.
Dale, do you have any comments or any other comments? Yeah.
No, I'm going to move on then. So the way we're forming the PET teams themselves is we're asking an owner-operator to be the leader with an EPC co-leader. And we'll talk a little bit about why we want both roles to be in leadership. Success enablers that, again, will be defined. Those are sort of the cars on the train. And then we're asking the industry subject matter experts to place their solutions in the right places and say, okay, well, if that's what you want, if that's what you need to achieve that productivity advancement target, here's what I have to offer in that space. And some of those will be provided by industry, and some of those will be provided by Fiatech members. Some enablers will have multiple solutions available, and the fact that we would then have them sort of in one place saves a lot of work, a lot of implementation, change management work from an owner or whoever's trying to implement the change, because I now see it, right? Oh, there's 3 options here. Let me step back and understand them, and let me step back and understand which fits better into my company culture or my work process or my technology platform. So hopefully by allowing everyone to come put their, not spend any time arguing, if you will, about which of those solutions is best, because if all 3 meet the need, then the selection of the 3 will be done by the people who have the need, right? They'll have to end up selecting one, but that's fine. They now know there's 3 choices to work through versus starting with literature search and trying to understand what's already out there. So really want the owner-operator leaders to become very engaged. Obviously, we want to end up with an economic win-win for the owners and the EPCs in the execution of a capital project. But the owners stand to gain by making this kind of productivity improvement. So we're asking the owners to be the catalyst for the industry change, and then also really understand and keep the focus on the money, if you will, on the value, because technology for technology's sake doesn't get purchased, right? It has to have identified value with it. And then asking our EPC partners to co-lead, because obviously a lot of the detailed operational knowledge is in your shops. You're the ones who's actually out there with other enterprise stakeholders, working with the vendors, working with the government agencies and stuff. So really asking you to identify, organize, and help prioritize success enablers, help screen solutions, and then pull in the partners. Obviously also look at how this helps your performance improvement and again delivers an economic win for the EPC partners also. So then we would ask, next slide, I guess. Anything else you want to add on that, Reg?
No, I think that's got it. Everyone, it isn't like everyone has to act in their own self-interest, and everyone, if they act in their own self-interest, like if you're responsible for some facet of some procurement or materials management or construction management, whatever, if you review the success enablers and PATs, there should be a touch point that directly will influence your ability to perform, and that's the best thing to be looking for. So that's my comment. That's what this slide here is talking to. Okay.
Yeah, so we're asking each of the members and industry partners to look at which PAT impacts you the most, which are your either biggest concerns or where you think you have the solution. If you think we're missing something, please put it in there, but also begin to say, okay, I can help with this one. I have expertise here, or I have a technology provider. So really building your own touch points into the PATs and the success enablers. And we'll begin to build the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I just on this note here, I remember there was a time we were having one of our Voice of the Owner meetings, and we had a subsequent meeting at our leadership forum last year where Saul from Era Energy got up and talked about how they were able to reduce change orders from an owner standpoint by 70%. And you can bet that he had everyone's attention. In fact, there's a short video about it. We'll talk about it in a minute. But it's like someone who has an answer, or even if someone who's tried something that failed and you can go to school on it so you don't go down that path, is just epically valuable to us. So what we're trying to do is cultivate, and if it doesn't come across, it's really important to cultivate everyone's expertise and aggregate it in a way that's useful. So are there any comments about that? Dale, do you have any comments?
Sorry, Reg, it took me a minute to get off of mute. No, I currently don't have any comments on that. I think everything is right on target, and I do like the part you talked about, where everybody needs to take this from their perspective. What can really help them is the way we're going to be able to drive this forward.
Yeah.
It can't be seen as, there has to be an advantage for engagement, right, Dale?
Absolutely, Deb, and I think that's the key. And so if everybody will take it, how can this help me? Then I think we're going to be able to move this forward, and in doing that, we'll move the whole organization forward.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think a lot of folks, as you can see, a lot of folks have said yes. A lot of the members at the annual conference said yes. I want to come engage. As I've said, at Dow, it says one, we're one of those 7 to 9, right? But basically, we've gone ahead and said we're expanding our engagement from Fiatech from what has historically been maybe 3 or 4 participants, primarily information system based participants, to we're going, I think it's up to 12 or 14 participants now, and we brought maintenance to the table. We're bringing procurement to the table because it's not just an engineering problem to solve, right? Construction is now actively engaged. The engineering IT folks, if you will, are still there because it's technically we still have to make the data flow and get the solutions on the ground. But we're also bringing more voices into the room with the work process knowledge on what we need to deliver productivity advancement for Dow. So I think it's up to each of us to make it very personal for our company and say, what can we get out of this?
So I'd like to add to that, Deb, because I think it's really important. The questions that are being created for each one of the PATs, and find out if people are actually answering those questions from a company perspective, and because it gives you the ability to think about what am I truly doing in my organization, and then where you may not have the ability to answer that question, someone else from another organization can. And so once we get that feedback, then that'll be very helpful in finding where our shortfalls are, and then where we truly may be at 80% capacity of realizing the completion of the PAT.
Yeah, so we're hoping once the SMEs have taken a look at the questions and said, yep, if you answered yes to all of this, each of these, or most of these, you would be able to achieve the result you're looking for here. We're going to start self-assessing on change orders next week. So, for example, right, because we're starting to look at putting a new change management system on the ground here at Dow. So we're going to be using that material is part of our work process input, right? Does our current work process have everything it needs? If not, what do we need to add? So again, grab the pieces that are where you want to focus and where you want to drive, either engagement with the owners or if you're an owner, where you want to make improvements. But yeah, we have to broaden the conversation beyond engineering folks. It's a multifunctional problem.
Yeah, if you think about it, let's say that you're a solution provider and you're contemplating expending money on developing some new tool set or enhancing another one. It would be very pragmatic to go to the success enablers and to the PAT, go first to the PAT and then drill into the success enablers and see where it is there's conversation taking place, or if there isn't a success enabler that identifies what you think is the most important thing to be providing as your next step in evolving your products, then you could have a success enabler that does that. Everyone can be selfish. It's okay. But if you delineate what it is you're considering and why you think it's important and you get feedback, then you can make a decision to what extent you want to invest in pursuing that path to improve the product. So it's actually quite fascinating because it's a way to mitigate risk for all of us and to converge on solutions that are really viable and deployable. Okay.
Okay, so where can you get this PAT information? If you go to fiatech.org, the public information about the PAT is there with the orange block. Click on that. Once you're in there, you can register, and if you're a member, you would then be given a code that allows you to go to the materials. And then obviously, we really hope to do a lot of work on the success enablers and the PATs during the fall leadership forum, which is September 19th to 21st in New Orleans. So hoping all the members will come, bringing as many people as you can economically bring nowadays, and continue to flesh out and work face to face, which, as everybody knows, is a nice way to do it because you don't see to do it very often that way. So, and Reg, I think Reg, next you're going to talk about how to get to the work environment.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk just a little bit about, and please, I always do better if I get interrupted because I certainly interrupt everyone else too much. But I was going to talk a little bit about what the PAT work area looks like and encourage everybody. Now, we've invited like over 33 folks to our productivity advancement target number 7, integrated material management. We've only had 12 people sign up so far, so it's still young, but all the PATs success enablers are in there. All of them can be clicked on to go see it, and you'll see that in a minute, and you can drill in and provide comments on, I think it's important, and I think it could be, all these different interactive type environments. So they're all delineated in a collaborative framework, which is provided by Slack. You review the success, the enablers, and then you open a dialogue, right? And so, Dale, you might say, well, I don't really see this as important because it's inherent in this step and in this process, and it's not really provided by within the context of what this PAT's about. It's really provided by that. And someone may say, well, yeah, you're right, but it's really this. And hopefully you'll see a convergence on a perspective that's consistent with respect to each one of the success enablers. And then we'll also be taking information that's generated by the work areas, which are members only, and pulling it out for the public information periodically. But for now, the membership's required. There's a lot of reasons. One is you'll know who all the people are that are participating on the PATs. You'll know specifically who they are and how to reach them. We just don't want to make that public. Also, we want to be able to focus in on developing solutions, not just having people sit back and armchair quarterback. This is a really working environment, which is why it's called that. I'll show you in a second, but access to the PAT in the Slack environment is based on your email domain. So if your organization's a Fiatech member, your domains for your organization are provided there, so you should be able to log in. And what's important about that is that it might not be you, Dale, it might be someone else within your organization that you think has skills. Well, they can just log in and move forward from Bentley just like you would. So it's not a barrier or an obstacle to participation, and it's not uniquely set up for individuals. So I'll sit on this slide for a minute. This is a very I'm not 100% sure it's complete, but I'm pretty sure it's complete. This is the delineation of the domains that will have access to the various productivity advancement target environments. So if you don't see your organization, you need to send me an email. My name is Reg Hunter. My email address is hunter@fiatech.org. Okay. And by the way, while we're at it, I'm not tracking who's signing in and not. So if you want to keep engaged and keep in the loop on this stuff, send me your contact information as well at hunter@fiatech.org. Okay. So in looking at this, does anyone on the call today see something missing or their organization missing?
Just on track here. We're just going to get that membership settled off next week, so I'll get you an email. Right.
Okay. Who's this? Pardon me. Who's this again?
It's Matt with On Track Engineering.
Oh, okay, Matt. Yeah, good. Yeah, that would be great. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's just this is. I would love to hear comments when you go through the success enablers and see where On Track has relevance. Because if you can't find relevance, then the success enablers are wrong, or else maybe you maybe you have opportunities that you've yet to cultivate completely. It's just acting your own self-interest, right? Good. Okay.
Yeah, no, I saw probably at least half of the path. We've got some very great touch points for sure.
Yeah, and send me an email, or we can talk. Anybody who wants to talk about, well, how do I translate this into something that's actionable within my organization? Boy, that's the most important thing, right? How do we get moving forward? It's not like we aren't doing this for recreational purposes. I'd rather be canoeing, you know. Okay, let's see if I can get to the next slide here. So on top of that, we have a number of universities. I think there's about 11 or so. I can't count that quickly, but we aren't going to provide domain access for the entire university. That's unwieldy. So what we do, we have the option to invite specific individuals. So like in this case, the universities may have 3 or 4 individuals, like University of Arizona has, I think, 4, that are very involved with Fiatech and working on different projects and helping us, like in change readiness and things like that. So we can, within the Slack environment, we can invite individuals. And so having said that, if we have someone who has subject matter expertise, but their organization is not a member, we can actually invite them specifically to a certain success enabler so they can provide an overview of why this is important, or how to go about thinking about it and how to go about confronting it and things like that. So it gives us the agility to essentially accommodate gathering the information we want, but it doesn't burden us with potentially 50,000 people worth of 50,000 students chiming in. And again, if you have any questions, just chime in. Okay, so to try to help people understand sort of the cultivation process for how do you find solutions to success enablers, there's really 2 different sides of this coin. There's the outward-facing, public-facing side of this whole process, and then there's the internal one. And so, if you think about it, what we're talking about here is that you have a define, refine, and rank process where you have groups that are focused on success enablers and how do they look, and what is the relevance to the industry, what value does it bring to the industry, and can it be refined anyway, and how important is it, and then what kind of solutions would make sense. You may have a checklist of what you'd like to see as far as solutions, or you may have 4 or 5 different solution platforms and how they look with respect to those checklists. And then periodically, what you have is we're planning on having these immersive kind of webinars or engagements where we talk about the existing performance baseline. So what this means is that we aren't going to talk about what the solution is or what anything. We're going to say the existing process with respect to pipe spool fabrication involves this, and the ability to essentially provide transparency to the status of your spool and where it's being manufactured and what the materials are and things like that is critical, but it needs to be automated. So this really kind of describes the context of the existing practices within within a company to provide the foundation for saying, okay, well, if you had a solution to it, what would that look like? So in this mini webinar, if you will, you start saying, here's the context of what the need is of the industry. Here's an example of a prospect for a solution, and here's sort of its strengths and weaknesses. So now all of a sudden you have a target of where you're trying, you raise awareness of what's going on now, and then you talk about potential solutions with respect to that, and you're communicating that through a webinar sort of environment so people kind of understand everything. Does that make sense? Then you revert back to on the internal side within Fiatech, and you start refining and solving the problem. So what you're really trying to do by this outreach is you're trying to find more subject matter expertise that may exist in the industry that you haven't identified yet. So I say, well, look, here's the thing we're thinking about. Here's the thing we're concerned about. Here's our vision for how we go about satisfying that need. But what do you think? And so if someone comes back and says, well, there's this, these are the reasons why you can't do what you just described. Well, you have to try to harvest that, capture that, and internalize it, and then deal with it. And so what you're able to do by soliciting information from the industry is you're able to essentially refine your success enablers and the criteria and things like that. And you're able to do a much more detailed analysis of viable solutions. And then if you have the answer, you either close it and move on to something else, or you continue to add more solutions. And so if you think about what you start having then is a portfolio within the success enablers of the delineation of what a success enabler needs to look like, and what are the most viable candidates and why the industry needs, and then what are the most viable candidates with respect to satisfying it. Is there any questions about that? I feel like an auctioneer sometimes. And I'll send you, please, again, send emails to me if you've attended this, and I'll send you these PDF of these slides. You're members, so I can send you the slides themselves. It's about 14 megs, so I'm happy to send you anything you need. Okay? So, and Deb, chime in anytime, okay? So where we are with respect to achieving these Slack environments, we have patent number 7 is already in a Slack environment. You've all been invited and can come to it and start looking at the success enablers and providing comments, recommend other success enablers. And we're in the process now for Pat 1, 2, and 3. I'll be migrating them into this environment next week while I'm on vacation. So you can look at the patent number 7 as a proof of concept evaluation. So the more participation we get in that, the more confident we are that we're on the right track. So I touched on this already slightly, but basically the Slack environment is a really highly popular tool now. You go to slack.com, look at all their examples. I've briefed the people at Slack about what we're doing. They're in Dublin, which is nice accents. I've described sort of how we're going about doing it, and they understand. And so if the day ever comes where we run into some sort of roadblock, at least they're aware of what we're doing and how we are trying to advance our industry. But the public channels, which is what you'll see on the left-hand side, are all transparent. So any kind of dialogue that's going on with respect to the success enablers, you'll be able to see the whole history related to that. You can set up to have it notify you if you're involved in a success enabler and converging on a solution. You can have notifications if someone made an input against that and have it come to you. You're able to upload files. You can upload, PDFs of documents. You can upload videos. You can upload procedures, anything you want. My only request there is that if you want to upload a video, let me know and I'll help you convert it to YouTube so it just keeps the file size smaller. What's interesting, Slack's only 2 years old, and right now they run about 2 million users per day, and they also integrate with many other tools.
I was going to ask everybody on the phone, is anyone else using Slack for other purposes already? I know Todd is.
I am not.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be, I'm sorry, this is a little bit blurry even for me here. This is a little bit of a voyage of discussion because it's like a social media type environment. But every time I look at it and I start thinking about how dialogue can be established, you can have private conversations where one person will tell another person that's technically not right, but they don't want to have that person lose face. So they can just send a message directly to the other person that's basically indicated interest in this particular productivity advancement target. You can upload materials, like I said before. You can add icons and things like that. So I think it's it's one of these things that you kind of get overwhelmed by features and functions. And so I've only been doing this for about maybe 2 weeks. It's To be truthful, it's a whole lot easier than PowerPoint, and so it's kind of like learning a whole new way of thinking about things. But I do think it's worth the time and investment. I think what's also nice is that if you are a higher level manager and you want to see whether or not your organization is really engaging, you can go look at the specific success enablers that you're hoping that Tom's going to be involved in, and see whether or not Tom's interacting or not. So there's visibility throughout your organization with respect to advancing these, and there's also the environment that allows you to cultivate convergence on solutions. And if you have comments and questions, I don't think I'm a trainer on this. Okay, I know enough to fool people, so don't let me fool you. But it isn't that bad. It's not. Okay. So like I said, the productivity advancement targets number 7 is sort of our proof of concept. There's 42 success enablers. We had to add 2 because we had a request from Faraz, CCC, talking about marking materials at point of origin and tracking them all the way through to the end, and it wasn't clearly articulated in the first of the 1 through 40 success enablers, so we added that in. But each one of these numbers it goes from 1 to 40 on the right-hand side there. You can click on it. It'll show you what the success enabler is, and then you'll be able to interact and provide comments with respect to each one of those. So I don't even know if this is true, but it seems reasonable in this case for success enabler number 1 is, does your organization systematically capture whole costs associated with project material management activities and compare it to should cost models to identify? It could very well be that CII has a solution to that, right? It has a modeling tool, or some other organization has it, or it could be that, well, this isn't really that important, or an owner organization has it, or an EPC has it, and they're willing to share it. But this sets the foundation for people to reflect on. I don't even know how important it is. I think it's important, but that's just me. Dale, or anyone else, do you have a way of understanding, how much? I know that a lot of times, 50% of the time, materials availability is blamed as one of the primary sources of project overruns, cost overruns, and delays. But do we have a way of knowing? See, the point here is that if you know how much you're losing, that's a very good motivation for fixing it. And that's kind of the point of this success enabler number 1. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, right now, Dow would say no, and oh shoot, we should. So, right? That's where we are.
Yeah, and to me, it's like
we have data about the pieces of the project management activity model, but we don't definitely understand the whole thing yet. So. But we need to, because we want to automate a lot of the data flows. And anytime you want to build automation into your work process, the first thing you have to do is say, what's the benefit I'm going to achieve if I invest in that technology, right? So.
Yeah. It's actually quite fascinating, right? Because you can see building the model causes you to have to debate with people like, oh, I didn't know you did that. It's kind of like an interactive project planning. It's more like, what are the dependencies? What are the uncertainties? What are what's the impacts associated with something not getting done? We wouldn't build a model that's Dow specific. We'd build an environment that's industry oriented, where you basically fill in the attributes of uncertainty and the dependencies and the densities of things in the timeline. So models are always a lot of fun. So, but by the way, all success enablers are kind of like this. They all kind of set the foundation of what's needed, and then you start cultivating how do you go about satisfying those needs. So I took a whack at trying to explain what how you'd progress through from a success enabler to solution, and back to the success enabler number 1. What I kind of bulletized stuff to think about what would the flow look like. And so I apologize, I'm going to read this, but I think it's perhaps important to do that. Is that, you need to, in this interaction environment, you need to find out who's interested and what their subject matter expertise is. And then you need to get a feeling for how important is it and why is it so important to the industry. And then is it described correctly? Does it really tell you what it is you want to achieve and why? And then what practices are out there that already are in place that addresses this, and then what are barriers that must be overcome. So you kind of go through all these questions, and you can see a gradual awareness and consensus building, and saying, well, if it's going to work, it really needs to look like this, and if it's going to be, how can I prove it? How can I demonstrate it to an owner or an EPC, to all the EPCs, that it's viable and adoptable, and how can I ensure that it'll be adopted for the long run? And if we don't have all these answers, we may need to launch a project within Fiatech to provide the solutions that's needed. And so from all of that, which is the dialogue that takes place with respect to each success enablers, what you really have is sort of this portfolio, or you have solutions to the individual success enablers, and you have a collection of 42 of those things. And you have multiple solutions, as Deb said, with respect to that. So the first part of the solution would be, what is the urgency and the current operating practices that to provide context that the industry has to begin with? Like, why should I care? And then what are the challenges and requirements for that solution would have to satisfy to be viable? And then what are the strengths and weaknesses, and to what extent and in what places is it applicable? And what are the related documents that support this? What are the videos that can help us provide insight into what this is about? And then back to what we were saying before, is that you don't have to wait for the completion of a productivity advancement target. What you are really doing is you're harvesting incremental benefits with respect to success enablers. So if you're a solution provider, you may be principally interested in 3 or 4 success enablers. What you want to harvest is that, right? So you care about improving the industry, and by worrying about those success enablers, you're helping the industry, but you're really harvesting direct benefits directly out of just pursuing the success enablers. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I have a question. As we look at this slide and this process, then let's talk about how that works in practice and within Slack. So who's interested in what's your subject matter? So we have someone that's interested in enabler number 30, and they go into that particular chapter and say, here, this is who I am, this is my background, and or my, this is my expertise, and then they start this dialogue, and there's other people interacting. Maybe we upload documents to show here's an approach to this, to solve this. Is there a steering team or some way to take this dialogue, which with 42 enablers could certainly be a lot, and then start to funnel it down into these solutions? How do we get from a lot of discussion and input to a solution?
Well, overarching, keep in mind everyone can see this stuff, so obviously you would not necessarily upload things that you consider proprietary. But so in the beginning, you're just kind of putting your foot a little bit in the water. But overarching it, keep in mind that the PATs are being driven by both owners and EPCs. So you'll see kind of an open question with respect to the success enablers. And so you may see a response back from Exxon or Chevron or Shell or whatever. You'll see some sort of comment that you don't want to say, well, we always use Primavera, it's not a problem. That's really not the point of this. That, how do you link schedule to interactive project planning and to project controls? And you don't want people to be dismissive that it's not a problem, because clearly our industry has not improved in productivity, so we can never say everything's handled. It's oxymoron, right? So I think that to answer your question is that there is insight and visibility into comments and discussions, and if you have owners and EPCs that are invested and committed to achieving these productivity advancement targets, and they see some dialogue going on, you want to get a response. And so there's a platform there. You can either send an individual message, like I could send a message in the case of material management to Deb, and I'll say, Deb, this organization brought up this. I don't know that this is, I don't understand. Could you get someone in your organization to clarify it's PAT number success enable number 12? Does that answer your question?
Well, I think the question is, there will be a PAT team of folks who will concentrate on processing the activities of the PAT and turning it into other deliverables, right? In other words, the PAT team will work towards driving to a set of defined solutions for that enabler. So it won't just be dialogue, right? There'll be processing and evaluation, and then publishing of solutions, right? So.
Right. Well, and I think my point is, if you've got 40-something people interested in this and there's a lot of interaction, practically there's going to be a smaller subset who may be more intimately involved or maybe more active, and others are maybe just looking at staying informed, just keeping up with what's going on, but may not have as much to contribute. So it's almost, you need a RACI chart of let people identify, am I responsible for this, or am I consulted, or do I just want to stay informed?
Yeah, I think we've defined the roles on the PET team. There's the owner leader and the EPC leader, and then members. Mm-hmm. But I agree, depending on what we're trying to work at that particular time, we may ask somebody to come, work with us, subject matter expert to come, engage for 3 or 4 months, right, while we work through something. Okay. And then maybe they can back out, and we bring in, somebody else or whatever. But there needs to be a core team of 10 to 15 probably. Mm-hmm.
And that helps us.
Active folks. Right?
Yeah, and that helps us within our organization to go seek out the subject matter experts for these different PATs and say, well, this is what your expected level of participation may be, because everyone has a day job and they need to know what that commitment is going to be.
Yeah, so not everybody is going to sign up for the long term, right? So they're going to come in and out. So, but there needs to be a core. I agree. We agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Great. Any other questions about this? By the way, we have a little over 20 people have signed up. So here's some examples of what's been uploaded into the integrated material management, PAT number 7. There's a value-driven holistic approach. This is a large document. It's about 100 pages, but it really takes you all the way through the characteristics associated with moving material from points of origin all the way to destination. And it helps you come up with a way to understand how costs are being incurred. And then it helps you, by doing that, you can start having a holistic approach to productivity improvement planning. It's a document that I wrote, I guess, a year or two ago, but it doesn't get much. People use it, like TVA used it to essentially do some offsite planning. Chevron used it for some of their planning, but now you have it in the Slack environment where you can go download it, read it, and figure out to what extent it's relevant to what you do. Another project that has been uploaded that you probably may not even be aware of is seeing the future through predictive performance indicators. This is an interesting thing, and this belongs to Fiatech. This belongs to everybody that's a member of Fiatech. What it does, it provides an environment using neural networks to essentially look at the historic behavior of something like the movement of material or something like that, and anticipate the likelihood of future events once the training is complete. And so you can think about that from an advanced work packaging standpoint, that KPIs isn't going to get you there. KPIs are more like looking at the here and now, but not looking into the future far enough to be able to proactively do things. What this analytics tool does is it lets you can look as far out as 4 or 5 months. So even though the pipe spool is not delivered, it'll give you a confidence interval that's saying there's over a 70% likelihood that the pipe spool will be delivered at least 4 months late. And now all of a sudden you can say, well, that hasn't happened yet. You say, that's right. So now what you can do is you can take action preemptively to keep it from happening. So these are some examples of what you would expect and hope to see within each with respect to success enablers. And I mentioned it earlier that you have these awareness videos. They're like 5 to 10 minutes long. Pat 2, I haven't got that totally up and running, but there's a really interesting video that talks about, how often do change order, what are the biggest sources of change orders? And then I mentioned that Saul Hernandez made a presentation about how they had been able to achieve 70% reduction in change order. And it's fascinating. I mean, I've gotten so much positive feedback about it because it wasn't like a theoretical thing. They took the discipline to take their 3D models and have it in lockstep continually in lockstep with the fabrication process throughout. So they didn't really have red lines at the end of the day. They have the as-built configuration. And so I think that was one of the fundamental drivers. But you can watch the video and decide what it was about what Pat talked about and how and what way it's relevant to you. And Deb mentioned, I haven't made this recording yet, but this was a presentation made by Mike Pye about ripple cost. Mike pointed out that they'll look at the change order cost, and he says we get pushback from our clients, and they think that we're stuffing the ballot box, or I forgot what word he used, but basically.
Reg, got 2 minutes.
Okay, well, basically he'll explain how his ripple cost model works. Okay, we're almost done. Oops, sorry, hang on. So anyway, if you're not a member, you consider joining. The slide's self-contained here, but look at the success enablers and things like that in the product and the public information about that. Plan on attending the leadership forum, or better still, join Fiatech and work with your peers to systematically drive productivity improvement. So the last one is we really want you to be involved. You need to verify that you have domain access, study the Slack tool, log and review the success enablers, participate in developing. So if you have any questions or comments, please send me your contact information. And I think that's it. Oh.
Yeah, I think one of the things we need to really do is, again, understand which of the 12 PATs you want to be engaged in, and who in the organization needs to be engaged in which other ones. So, right, the expectation is not that the core Fiatech liaison becomes engaged in all 12 PATs. So, help us understand where you want to connect and who is your entry point, or who's going to sit on the different teams, and then how big an engagement they participate in will evolve over time. So.
Yeah, in July we're going to have the productivity advancement target teams forming more strongly and oriented to each one of the PATs. So this is the agenda that we're probably going to be pursuing. So we're looking forward to you getting involved and also communicating within your organization to get more people involved. So I think that's it. Any questions or comments? And I can stay on as long as you want, but that's pretty much captured the messages that we wanted to convey. Anything else, Deb?
No, I'm good. I hope everybody wants to come play, and we'll get this puzzle defined so that people can make progress. So.
Yeah, and again, my last name, email address is hunter@fiatech.org. I guess it can't be much easier than that. Send me an email if you like.
Questions or any other discussion? I know folks have to drop off.
No, thank you, Reg. Thank you, Deb, for today. I really appreciate it.
It's starting to make sense, Dale?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get to work, huh?
Yes, ma'am. We got a lot of work to do, too.
We did have a great turnout. Thank you. We didn't really lose anybody. We've had over 20 the whole time. And this recording, I'll send you all this recording if you send me an email. I'll send you a PDF of the slides. And if you want me to send you the PowerPoint version for you to use, I'm happy to do that. So just stay engaged, okay?
Great, thanks.
More to come. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.